welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the midweek pod, and we are previewing the Tulane game. I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
Lucas.
Jay.
And it's been 4 days, and I don't feel a whole lot better, but I feel a little bit better. My homerness, maybe my natural homerness, is coming out a little bit. I can see the upside. I can see the optimism, but it's still got to take a lot of improvement. What do you guys think? But before we get to that, I'd like to know what Dr. Keene thinks, because Dr. Keene is our sponsor. Dr. Keene is a board-certified surgeon specializing in orthopedic sports medicine. For over 20 years, Dr. Keene has been serving the greater Oklahoma City area along with Western Oklahoma. Not only does this include surgical skills in primarily the knees and shoulders, he is a constant figure on football sidelines throughout Oklahoma high schools and colleges. Dr. Keene's deep commitment to sports and devotion to his patients proves that he is the man to see, even though he's an Oklahoma State fan. Thank you, Dr. Keene, for your sponsorship.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to get the doctor's orders on this, but I think it's going to be pretty similar to what anybody's going to say is a lot of stuff has to improve, or OU's in for a really tough season that begins this Saturday. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you. My homerisms are trying to rear their head. I think I'm more so homeristic, if you will, about being able to fix things. I mean, what have we said all along on this podcast? It's fixable.
It's
I do
fixable.
think it's fixable.
We're close.
That said, like, the thing that's really concerning for me is it's just the injuries that we're not getting guys back that we need. We don't know. I don't know Gentry Williams' status, but the big ones being Nick Anderson. He might play this week. I think we've heard that story for the last 2 weeks.
How's that? Yeah,
We
how's that
haven't
any
seen
different than what we've
anything.
been hearing?
I'm gonna guess Gentry's done for the season
Yeah.
Oh,
because it's the same shoulder that he messed up before, and he just kind of collapsed on the field.
Yeah.
And you just can't.
didn't he come back in though?
You just can't wear a brace for that for the
Kip
rest of the
came back
year.
in.
Oh,
He got hurt.
Yeah, he
Did
just
Gentry
needs
stay
to
out?
go get it fixed again
Yeah,
and
Gentry was
rest
in
the
street
whole
clothes.
year.
Oh, that's right.
Second half.
But
So-
sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, and fair point. I think from what we've seen in the past from OU, if you haven't heard anything, it's usually bad news. But that being said, I mean, defense keeps rolling, hopefully. Offense figures out a couple things that we'll talk about here tonight. And you've got a different story going into Tennessee next week. So I'm doing everything I can to latch on to any shred of hope. It's been a rough 4 days. So
I'm still down in the dumps. Just the lack of offense and imagination, execution. It seems like I looked it up and we scored 17 points in the second half against Temple, and the offense scored 0 points in the second half against Houston. So to me, that lets me know that it doesn't seem like we're making any halftime adjustments that are doing anything whatsoever. I mean, we scored 34 in the first half against Temple. We're like, yeah, we're rolling. And then you come out in the second half and it's only 17 against a team that's not very good. And they did put in Hawkins, I think late third.
Mhm.
It was a little bit earlier than I thought they should have put
Same.
him in, honestly.
and obviously it was.
Yeah. And then you come into this next game, you're like, well, Houston gave up 200 yards rushing the week before. Let's get the run game going. It'll open up the pass game. It didn't do either. And then going into halftime, yeah, you're still struggling at wide receiver. You're struggling at offensive line. But to me, that tells you should run quick slants, wide receiver screens, try to get the running game going on the outside instead of just trying to run it up into the pile. And nothing that they did in the second half worked, obviously, because we didn't have any extended drives. And even when we got the turnover inside the opponent's 40, we ended up missing a field goal.
A
because we
long
couldn't do
field
anything
goal.
with it.
You didn't even get a first down.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about how bad the second halves have been, the more worried I am about the continuation of the season with the coaching not adjusting at halftime.
Is it just stubbornness though in these first 2 games? And that's what I'm so frustrated with talking about stubbornness with coaches. I mean, we talked about it with DeMarco last year with the running back rotation.
We talked
Still
about it
have
with
talked
Stu,
about it with Stoops, talked about it with Levy.
Lincoln.
Like with all these guys, is it just, hey, our game plan is sound, let's keep doing what we're doing and we'll win this game? Like, you think they're that arrogant where they don't think they need to make halftime adjustments on that side of the ball. Like it's just,
Or
'cause-
ignorant that they're not making the right ones, or
Right.
the players are so incompetent that they can't, and that would be
That
back
they
to
can't
coaching,
handle
that
the
they
adjustments.
can't handle adjustments,
Well,
that
you
they
could-
haven't coached them up to get there.
You can swing it to the other side of it and say, maybe they're making adjustments that they don't need to make.
That's
Maybe
a
it
good
was
point.
working enough, but they feel
You're
like
getting too radical.
We've got to.
Now, the plays didn't seem to change,
No,
No,
the
but
plays got worse.
but it could be one thing or another. I mean, one of the things that I think was clearly bad as we looked at a lot of people's clips on the internet and different little game clips and film, you had guys doing clearly wrong things, like both guard and tackle pulling on a play going the opposite direction. There's no way both of them are supposed to take out the trailing defensive end. There's just no way. So one of them is playing a position that he's not used to, and he's
know
hearing
what's
the
on.
call and he's thinking, "Oh, I pull and go left here," and he's not remembering, I would pull and go left if I were in that position, but I'm in this position where I'm supposed to be a lead blocker. So I think it could be some of both of those things where maybe whatever they're telling them to do is insufficient to actually get anything executed in the second half. So it's like it's adjustments for naught, because it doesn't matter. It's like go from doing one wrong thing to a new wrong thing. It's not going to work. It's a wrong
and
thing.
there's examples of Jackson on zone reads picking the wrong one, the DN crashes and he's still handing it off to the running
Mhm.
back.
Yeah, the RPOs
some
are
of the
bad.
RPOs have been bad. So I don't understand why they're not trying to simplify or run less RPOs, because when you're moving all these guys around different positions, like you just talked about,
Mhm.
if they're worried about, is this gonna be if the lineman's worried about, is this gonna be a run play or pass play? And the wide receiver, like Brennan Thompson read one thing, Jackson read the other thing. He throws at one spot, Thompson went the other way. It seems like, and we can go back to injury on that to me, because
Yeah.
I would say Arnold, his primary receivers working through the year were probably Gibson,
Mhm.
Anderson, Baruch, and Burks.
Mhm.
And Burks is the only one of those four still playing currently. And so
It's a huge part of it.
it
It's
seems
gotta
like
be.
if you got Thompson with the twos and who else? Hester with the twos, whatever.
Reagan's.
They're not
they're on
throwing
the
the
same
ball.
page.
They're on the same page
Yeah.
with Arnold. So it seems like you need to go away from doing the RPO thing
Mhm.
and just go back to playing regular football.
But the problem, I think you're right. The problem or frustration with that is RPOs are really pretty simple. If they're rushing three, you hand the ball off. If they've stacked the box, you don't. It really isn't complex. It shouldn't be.
Well, nowadays it's not. Nowadays it's
Well, the receivers still have to know. The receivers have to decide, well,
Yeah,
this is
his
press
route-
coverage or this is off coverage. So during off coverage, this is what I do. During press coverage, this is what I do. And when Jackson looks up, he sees off.
Okay.
And then right before
Okay.
before he snaps it, it becomes press. Well, then the receiver goes to do one thing, and Arnold saw off
So
before, so
I hear
now
you.
they're on the same page.
That's it. That makes sense. So it's not Jackson making the mistake, although he might be, and I think he
It's-
did.
It's all the above.
It's the
at this
receivers
point.
really making a mistake. I mean, it could be the running backs too.
I mean, Burst came out and said on the interception, the deep ball, that he just flattened out his route when he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And should have cut in instead.
Everyone saw
The
that.
corner or the safety
Yeah.
literally just stepped in and took it.
Yeah.
So he admitted that yesterday at the post-practice interview.
Mhm.
He just said, yeah, it was my bad. I should have cut in and kept going on the route. And
well, not that if
Flattened out.
that's actually the case, and that's not just him protecting his guy.
yeah,
Gives
Oh,
me
no, 100% was.
it gives me
Like,
a
when
little. It would give
when
me a
you see,
little
like,
bit
the all
more.
22 version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt
If
about
he
it.
had stayed at a 45-degree angle, because as soon as he made his cut, Jackson had already thrown the ball.
Right.
And he
the
changed
safety's
his
just waiting on the
trajectory.
ball.
And that gives me a little bit more ease in my head, because that just looked like a ball that Jackson threw up to just say, go get it, without any sort of regard for who was back there. So if the route was supposed to be him cutting across,
No, it was,
it's
he changed, if he had stayed on a 45-degree
an
angle,
option.
Instead of this,
Yeah,
instead of going
Going
Yeah,
up.
60-degree angle or whatever,
Right.
which he,
62 actually. I
Yeah.
measured. I approached
which
that.
whatever he changed it, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it wasn't what I thought up until just now, where it was a grossly underthrown ball, which we've seen for the last 2 seasons. It was just a misread or a miscommunication between Burks and Arnold.
Yeah, I think I've convinced myself that all of this the given is the injuries and different players playing and playing out of position and not being on the same page. But I still think the coaches overestimated our backups' abilities to run the scheme. And part of it also being too stubborn to realize that,
Right.
or accept the fact that we don't have the twos as ready as we thought we had the twos.
So I think that what I wrote down in my notes, and I think it's being echoed by everything you're saying, is we need to simplify down to what we can do effectively. And the question I pose is, can the offense become serviceable?
I'll say simplify isn't the word. I still
Simplify?
can't
What's-
say it.
it's definitely not the word.
Simplify.
Not the word.
I still can't say it.
Simplify.
Simplify.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. this
Simplify the
took-
language.
I don't maybe simplify is some
No,
internet thing we don't know
now
about.
I'm just going to
Ah.
skip the whole word for the rest of it. I don't think it's that. I think it's more of a black and white play call. Like
Okay.
I don't know that anything needs to be an easier
Well,
route or
that
an
can be a
easier
I think that can be a version of simplification. See, I can't even use that version of it. Yeah,
Not simplify.
past participle or whatever. No, you got to be careful about oversimplifying, because all of a sudden you're very predictable and it doesn't take much to beat you. But you need to boil it down to what can you be effective with? What can your players feel very comfortable with, including these number twos who don't obviously have the full skill set to do everything
Well,
you want to
honestly,
do.
if you want to dig even deeper, it's not even twos. I mean, we're going
Into threes.
deep,
That's
deep
true.
down the depth chart, because Hester got banged up and Brendan Thompson got banged up in that game. And you're literally looking at, if you want to call Burks your number one, you're talking about your
Anderson, Anthony.
seventh and eighth
Yeah.
receivers on the depth chart
Yeah.
are your starter now, right? They're your main players in the game. And I don't care who you are as a coaching staff. In college, your seventh and eighth receivers are not going to be ready.
But at that point, that is what you have to work with, right? So in the lens of simplification, make it easier, make it simpler, where I'm not going to make you go and, understand this full route tree. And even if you understand it, I'm not going to make you go do some complex route. Run something again, simple,
Well,
where you're just getting them in space.
one thing you can do, every receiver's going to go out for a pass route. Everybody's going to do a job, but you don't have to have the full complement of options available to Jackson. You can tell Jackson, ignore this, ignore this, ignore this. You're either doing this or you're doing this. You're either throwing to this guy, you're throwing to this guy, and you isolate the guy you think can be the one, and it may be the most talented receiver, it may be the most vulnerable DB. And you're saying, look, we're going to line up with Brendan Thompson on one side and Burks here on the other side, and we've got our running back, and you got three options here. And that's it. Don't even think about these other guys. Or maybe it's sharp. Regardless, don't worry about these other things. They're a distraction. They're going to be running something, and you're just trying to beat one-on-one, and then you just have to execute that one play. And if it's not there, it's almost like one look and a go. One look and run and just slide.
It's the Hurts.
The Hurts model.
Well, with these helmet communications in the NFL, it stops at 15 seconds or when they break huddle to go up the line. But in college, it's just 15 seconds, right?
Right.
15 seconds
That's my
into the play
understanding.
So yeah,
Yeah,
we're
into
at
the
the 25-second mark. Yeah.
The 25-second mark.
I
No,
thought it was at the
15 seconds of the
play
clock.
clock left.
Oh, left?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it's
So
15
you get
seconds.
25 seconds of communication.
So if we're going to continue to run this hurry up,
Or 25, depending on
Right.
if we're going to continue to run this hurry up,
or 10.
Right.
then to me, you need to get up to the line and the coordinator should say,
Yeah.
hey, it's the X receiver.
Yeah.
He's going to be open on this because that safety's cheating up.
Yep.
Or
we know
I
he's
saw
the
the
vulnerable.
linebacker look like he was going to back off.
Mhm.
So go ahead with the run. And this RPO can be called in the headset
Right.
if you're running the hurry up, which I still don't like, but that could be a benefit if you're using it correctly.
I agree. I totally agree. There
You
are
gotta figure something out to
there.
benefit you at this point.
Yeah.
So
That's
You
gonna be
do.
adjustment for every single college team in the country is still getting adjusted to this.
Right.
Unless their head coach was an offensive play caller in the NFL and it's second nature to them, which I don't know how many of those
It'd be
there are. I
interesting.
mean,
It'd be
there's not
interesting
Chip
to look at
Kelly's
that and
out
see
there.
who does have that experience and if
Well,
they
Chip
seem
Kelly's
to have
one.
an
I mean, where's
advantage.
he at? Ohio State.
Mhm.
Ohio State,
I
yeah.
mean,
I still
he
like
would have
what
done
you
it in
said,
Philly.
though. I still like what you said last week, where
Me too.
just go with the check with me model.
Yeah.
Like you say, here's what we see initially, and then just check with me.
Yeah.
And you give a hand signal, say,
It's A
yes,
or B.
it stands, or
Yeah.
no, here's the new play. Like, it's not,
And
maybe it is rocket
I
science.
can remember
don't
under
know.
It's not.
Lincoln's offense is Baker would talk about, and I want to say Casey talked about it when he came on, about there being 2 play calls.
Yeah, and he this or
And,
that.
yeah, he would either make a hand signal that we're going with play 1 or play 2, and it would be the check with me offense.
Yep.
And the whole, other than the offensive line, essentially, all the skill position players and the quarterback look to the sideline and they know it's the first thing he called or it's the second thing he called.
And that brings up
And the
something.
nomenclature's probably got to be simplified enough to where you're not spouting off 15 sentences
Right.
to do 2
No,
play calls
yes,
in the
exactly.
huddle.
Exactly. And so, especially if you've told him what to look for, I love that concept. One thing I like about it is it should be basically impossible to intercept those signals and know what's going on.
Right.
And even if you know it, it's too late. You can't possibly signal that in.
Fill up
So-
medallions.
Yeah, right. But it really would be. Even he wouldn't, you'd neutralize him. So it wouldn't matter because they've got to communicate. The play's already happened. What I like about that and what it brings up, and I'm gonna call it, maybe this is a new segment we should start, the Homer hypothesis. Willie Fritz is a really good coach. He's a flat out really good coach. And we saw many situations where both where they were scheming as well as what adjustments they made in the play based on what we were signaling, what we were saying on the offensive line and everything, they seem to know something. Like they seem to know our play calls. So it's very possible that they schemed a lot for us and they actually knew enough to know what to do with very simplistic. If we're not going to do the things you're talking about, which we didn't do, as far as I know, then they could scheme a look at me and it's this or it's that, and they know what to do to counteract what our offense was going to do. So a little bit of a Homer optimism would be this was a false negative in terms of our offense to a degree because they were in position to counter us really well, more than you would expect in a typical game plan, just because a well-coached team was in really good position and maybe even knew what to look for to say it's A or it's B, and here's how you need to defend against that. I'm not letting them off the hook on it, but I am saying there's a possibility and a likelihood that they scheme for us a lot more than we scheme for them, and they may have understood some things about us that we weren't prepared for.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to the indictment on the adjustments. Like,
Right.
it's obvious to us fans that whatever we're doing is not working. Whatever Houston's doing is working extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Go change it.
Well, when we watched the clip online of the guy running through the all 22, one thing that I noticed that stood out to me was as he ran through 25 offensive passing plays from the first half to the second half, they didn't change. There were a lot of curl routes and they're basically all the same stuff. So we didn't change that up. If anything, if you turn every one of those curl routes into a deep route with somebody else crossing, that's a totally different offense to defend against. We didn't do that. So whatever was working continued to work. So we either didn't make adjustments at all, or the adjustments we made were not in that facet of the game whatsoever. So there's opportunity for improvement here, a lot of opportunity for improvement, but there's also a need for improvement. So as we look forward to the Tulane game, one of the things that we were already concerned about before the Houston game even began was how close Tulane was playing K-State. And we all have a lot of respect for K-State. I'm going to put forth 2 Homer hypotheses. This is going to be an ongoing thing. One, K-State may not be as good as we expect they are. They're a well-coached team, but they don't have to be super good. They just may not be that good. But the other thing is, this was pointed out to me by my friend JT today on a very long car ride, where I got to take in all of his perspective, and it was really good. when you're looking at, if you're Tulane and you're preparing for this season and you're looking forward to your schedule, which of the two games between Oklahoma and Tulane are you preparing for versus Oklahoma, Houston versus Tennessee, not Tulane probably as much. Well, if you're Tulane, you're probably chalking Oklahoma up to a loss. What you'd like to see is by the third game, hopefully we're competitive and we want it to be a quality loss. But K-State's almost a must-win game. If we can get by Houston and if we can run the table and be real competitive, and we are looking at a playoff berth. So I would hypothesize, and this is JT's hypothesis, that they probably spent a lot of time on K-State, whereas we didn't spend that kind of time on Houston. So they're going to look really good against K-State potentially because they schemed for them a lot. In fact, they may have not spent until this week any time on Oklahoma, whereas we might have spent a little bit of time on Tulane, definitely didn't spend a lot of time on Houston in the same regard, especially after the UNLV loss. So 2 games in, we may be looking at a game that we're putting undue respect for Tulane at, whereas, well, no, they prepared really hard for K-State. They should have looked good in that game and did. So they may not look as good as we think they're going to, or they may not be as good as we think they look just because they prepared really hard for a game that was nearly a must win for them. And yeah, we looked poor in a game that we were supposed to win by a lot, and we did end up winning.
See, preseason, I kind of scoffed at the idea that Houston and Tulane were just an easy run through game. And even though Houston maybe isn't that good,
You got to
they
respect
were
them.
literally a conference opponent last year. I mean, this is a Big 12 opponent. It's a non-con.
And you know they're
now
well coached.
for us.
Yeah.
But they're still a school
They're not
with
Temple.
a ton of local talent.
Right.
Right.
I'm not saying we should have. I'm not
And like you
letting us
said, they
off
got
the
a
hook
no,
there.
but I'm saying as fans and everybody else, and maybe the coaches did too.
Maybe so.
They just and again, Houston might lose every game from here on out. I don't know.
If history's any guide, they will.
But I don't think it should have just been that given of a game. I didn't
No.
think it was that given of a game.
No, and
I mean, we had 41-10 as our scores.
the hypothesis isn't
That's
that
from
I didn't
watching
think
them
it-
the first.
I didn't
week.
think it was gonna be a 4-point game.
No, but I'm saying
Right.
no, exactly. But part of my score was from watching them the first week.
Yeah,
Right.
all of us.
But preseason, you can't just assume one of the Power 4 conference teams is just an overlook,
right.
right? It's not Toledo or
Or how
Temple.
we used to treat Kansas and Baylor.
Right.
It's just not that
No,
way.
and I'm not depend. My hypothesis doesn't depend on that. It's more so Tulane probably prepared very, very hard for K-State.
No, I agree.
And so-
They looked at the 2 games. They picked the one that they thought they could win the most. They
Uh-huh.
probably prepared for that one heavier, for sure.
So it's going to be like I'm all leading up to how we're going to cover the
But
spread.
I'm saying,
going on.
I think maybe the coaches did what maybe most of the fans and everybody else did, and just
Maybe.
thought we would roll Houston, and then watched them play the first week, and definitely thought we would just
Well, and I think a
sleepwalk
lot of
through
it,
Houston.
I think a lot of it as well is I do think we thought we could do what we did against Temple and treat it as a scrimmage.
Yeah,
And
but it's a Big
that's-
12 team.
that's what we looked like. We looked like we were trying to go out there. Even the whole game with the defense, with the rotations that we had, still some of that makes no sense to me. But
For a game that's not in hand.
exactly,
Yeah.
offensively, no adjustments. Everything else that we've talked about. I mean, it was just. I think you said it inside before the pod, Jay. When that game gets close, how do you not just say screw it? Like I'm opening up.
Yeah, that was
We-
actually a point I made.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And-
So
and-
it's like
and-
what, like let's go do something to win this game. If we have to show a couple things,
Yeah.
like let's make it not close.
So piggybacking on what I think you're making as a legitimate potential criticism of the coaching staff of not preparing well enough, at some point, you're in a 1-score ball game at halftime against a team that you know is good. It's not like fluky things have happened. Look, think back to 2 years ago when Alabama was up by about the same, could have been trailing to the Citadel at halftime. And they end up winning, of course, by a bunch of points. They probably were sleepwalking through that game, and they could turn it on, and they did. So whether or not your sleepwalking should be all that criticism well put aside, you get into a 14-6 game at halftime. That's the point when you say, okay, we're going to stop trying to learn from this game. We're going to stop trying to teach anybody anything. We're going to go back to bread and butter that we know we can succeed
We're gonna
with,
go put it away.
and we're going to put this game away. And they didn't do that.
Well, you
at
can even
all.
look at Alabama this last week against their opponent. I mean, that game is a one possession game midway through the fourth quarter until they get some short fields.
And they did get short fields, but they made it happen.
But they made it happen. Exactly.
And their
it's
offense,
more credit to them
their
than
offense
for us.
scored in the second half
Correct.
multiple times. Now from short fields, yes, but they scored.
They
We had a
scored.
short
They had a
field,
short
and we
field.
didn't score.
Yeah.
I looked into some of the numbers and
Oh,
we
sorry.
averaged 8.9 yards to go on third down for the game. 8.9. That's ridiculous.
I would love to go back and look at how many of those third downs Jackson Arnold pulled the ball and ran as
I
well.
can also tell you that I think it was the last 11 drives of the game, either 9 or 10 of those we started with a run on first
On
down.
first down. Yeah.
On first down, 9 or 10 of the 11, I can't remember which, but let's just say it's 9 of the 11. You run the ball on first down, and the average gain was 2 or 3 yards.
Yeah.
We had a couple sixes in there, but for the most part, it was 2 yard, Barnes for 2 yards, Arnold for 3 yards. So you're behind the chains
You're off schedule.
on second down right off the bat, and then you're throwing an incomplete pass, and bam, it's 3rd and 9 again.
Well, and if you're going to do that when it's not working, but you're getting 2 yards to 3 yards, you might as well just go 2 yards in a cloud of dust the whole way.
Do it again. Exactly.
Do it again. Run the
Yeah.
clock. Keep their offense off the game.
Try to get to 3rd and 6.
Keep our defense off the field and try to get to try to get
Yeah,
to
bad
3rd and
defense.
6
Yeah.
and or 3rd and 3, and then at 4th and 1 or 2 you're thinking about
Make
what
a
you can
decision.
do. Make a
That
decision.
comes into my second half adjustment thing again, which I know it sounds cliche to be like, oh, this other team come out with adjustments and then your team didn't. Sounds like, sour grapes or something, but literally you run the ball 9 of 11 times to finish the game and you're averaging 2 or 3 yards per run.
Right.
That seems like you don't need to throw it deep on first down, but at least run something that's like a 7 or 8 yard out route or a crossing or something.
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing the same thing. It's the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over and you expect different results.
Well,
And you aren't getting it.
the other part that's disturbing of our offense is the lack of diversification of the run game. It is, we basically have a dive left and a dive right. And if it makes some yards, great. If it doesn't, I don't know. We're just going to do it again later.
No power toss.
There's just nothing creative
We get a jet sweep every now and
in the run game whatsoever. Like nothing.
So I like that criticism. I want to
Because even with Temple,
have another point on that.
in the Temple game, when Franklin and Tatum both got yardage on their runs, they themselves kicked it outside.
Right.
They didn't go really where the play was going.
Right. They found
They
it.
made individual
Found a
plays.
It's running backs who actually have vision to go forward.
So
Sorry.
speaking of that,
But maybe you get yelled. But the irony is,
DeMarco probably beats
maybe you're
him off
getting
the
yelled
game.
at for that.
DeMarco
Right?
probably.
well, that's
gets
a big
switch.
question I've got. And
not,
so
not if he's not on the sideline in game 1.
another question. Good
Touche.
point. Good point. Another point that JT, my friend JT made, and I completely agree with this is, and we've talked about this. He's going to talk about it in terms of the jury's still out on DeMarco. And I think it really is. So when you look back at not just OU, but anybody who has success in running the football, any successful football team, they typically aren't on a 70-30 or 60-40 spread between a starter and a backup. And you get there pretty quick. I know we've got a plethora of talent, supposedly, back there.
That's what they say.
We can't keep everybody happy. It's not going to work. And nobody's happy when you got your starter getting 4 yards on 4 carries. What you need to do is just let's go with it. And if we need to make a change, you make a change. But you go ahead and you pursue one guy getting a majority of the carries and see what he can do. And if he can't do it, then you go to the next guy. But this constant rotation does not seem to be getting it done whatsoever. They're not in a rhythm. And whatever you're doing in terms of creativity or lack thereof, it's obviously not working. You're not putting yourself in a position to have success running the ball. You've got to figure out a way to have that mix be a successful mix where if in every, you may get a guy unhappy. Yeah, we've got 5 really good on paper running backs. It's going to be really hard to keep all 5 of them, aside from a guy who's a senior, on the team. But that can't be the worry. And I'm not saying that necessarily is the worry, but what is the worry? What is Marco DeMurray thinking?
He's on the He's on the
Marco
beat and bow
DeMurray.
path.
What'd I say?
Marco DeMurray.
Oh,
It's just not kind of nice.
That's his name.
I started it. I
You did,
rubbed
you
off.
did.
Oh, you did too?
No, I couldn't say the word.
Yeah.
Simplify.
I'm gonna simplify DeMarco Murray's name to
Yes.
Marco DeMurray. Well,
No,
that's his alter ego. We need the real DeMarco Murray back, not Marco.
The realest deal. Locks of the
Phone calls when he
week.
shouldn't have. Marco DeMurray is the guy on the sideline that doesn't know which running.
Well,
back to
here's
put
the
in
problem.
game.
What he's doing, he's doing the worst of all worlds. He's getting everybody in on a no rhyme or reason basis,
But he wasn't on Saturday. That was one of my complaints. Like,
but he's not handing the
he
ball
paid
to
him in
him
early.
either. Yeah,
he did, but did he get
One.
the ball?
he got 7 carry. He
One.
was in there for 7 plays and got 1 carry.
Okay.
So that can't be. That just and maybe that's out of his control as to what is happening. But I don't know. I want the experimentation to go on in practice, and the gameplay is we're going to go with this guy.
It's a guy.
And it's okay if you look back on the season and you say, wow, we don't worry about the criticism that you had these 2 guys running 70-80% of your plays in game 2, and it's a totally 2 different guys running for the rest of the season. If they're having success, no one's complaining. No one cares.
70-30 is a great split. You can't have the 70-30 flipping back and forth between running backs game to game.
Like, and
Exactly.
if you've got, listen, it seems like there's 4, right? that
Right.
We like, okay? Hicks is the only one to not get in.
Right. Hicks is the
Okay.
only one, yeah.
So do a thing where you've got 2 in the first half and you've got 2 guys in the second half.
If that's what you
And
want to do.
reevaluate the film after a couple of weeks of the season and pick your guy. That's
Or
messed up the
guys in
lead.
your rotation.
Yeah, pick your 2 out of the 4.
Well,
The
that's what was-
rotation's going to be
You
a
have
70-30
to
split.
have a guy.
Or
and that's,
60.
that's what's weird about last week is as much as we've heard about Sawchuck, like DeMarco chose Barnes last week.
Yeah.
Like he Barnes was in there the majority of the second half, not doing anything, but he was in there. And I mean, Sawchuck was nowhere to be seen. It was almost like, was he hurt?
Well,
Did something
he
happen?
had 3 carries early for 3 yards.
Yeah.
And then he sat for 2 quarters and they put him in for 1 more run where they got nothing.
It does. It
But
doesn't
you're not
make
gonna,
sense.
you're not gonna,
You're not going to get a
you're
rhythm.
not gonna do that. Yeah,
You're not-
gonna
you're not
come
gonna do
off
well.
the bench.
The only successful thing you've seen when there has been another player who plays was you have a guy that comes in who is like a Trey Sermon and finishes the game strong. You'll see
But he
that,
stays in.
but he stays in.
Yeah.
But like
that's his
Yeah, he
quarter.
becomes the guy.
That's
He
his
becomes
quarter.
the guy.
Yeah.
But it's never, all right, this is your half of the quarter, this is your half of the quarter. It just,
Or here's your 3 plays,
It-
here's your 4 plays.
none of that makes sense.
Speaking of Tulane, you know, we all had plans to go to New Orleans. What was that,
2021.
2021?
Yeah.
With the hurricane, you
Yeah.
know, foiled
Darn
it.
it.
Yeah.
They moved the game here.
The hurricane, we're the victims of the
Yeah.
hurricane.
Yeah.
That was a
Two
2-for-1 that OU had with Tulane because we played them at home.
But it wasn't at home. Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah,
wasn't at home,
yeah. And
right?
21 was an away game for OU. It was a home game for
Oh, so
Tulane.
it wasn't a 2-for-1 then? Was
Mm-mm.
it? Why didn't we repay the away game this year?
That was the away game. That was a home game for Tulane.
I know it was, but it was actually played here.
You're right.
So I'm wondering why they didn't with our schedule this year of
I
already
know.
having, we had 7 home games.
Because
And we're
of
used to
money.
only having 6. It's surprising that they didn't go ahead
I
and
mean,
just move that game. to
it's
New
not
Orleans.
surprising. I mean, look at it. It's New
Because-
Orleans sounds appealing to us, but it's a
Well,
is it a 45,000
what's
seat
crazy
stadium?
is watching the news today, the category 2 hit today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So literally this week, again,
Where are they practicing?
hurricane. I don't know.
Do they have to go somewhere?
I was thinking about that myself. I didn't
That may-
look into any
that should
Tulane,
have influenced the line.
any Tulane reporters to see if they had to move to Houston or something.
Huh.
Line dropped a
Practice.
point.
Yeah. So before we get to the line, because we're gonna have a lot to talk about on the line and all of that, let's talk a little bit about defense. Defense is still the absolute star of the show. However, not to be a complete realist slash pessimist, but we don't know a lot about the defense yet either. They look very good. I think they are very good. I think right now they're legitimately a top 20, maybe a top 15 defense, but they will have to improve a lot to maintain that status midseason and through the end of the year. Now, everybody's going to try to improve. Now, they are going to try to improve, but we shouldn't take it for granted like they've arrived and there's no, and I'm sure the coaching staff isn't that if I have any confidence in the coaching staff, it's that they're going to demand
Oh,
improvement.
they were still talking about Stutzman missed 3 or 4 tackles.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
he
looking
could
at
have
all
had-
the fine
somebody pulled
points.
that.
He did.
He had 16 tackles or something like that,
Now,
but he could have had 20.
The problem that's frustrating, I do want to talk about defense, but the lack of complementary football is you don't have the offense doing the job they need to do in games where they should be putting them away so you can rest your starters, get your guys in for rotation and rest. That didn't happen.
Well,
We had-
even our 3 and outs need to be better 3 and outs.
right, cleaner.
Our defense was tired.
Yeah. And they're going to get, and they had wear and tear and tire that they shouldn't have had to have.
You know what's a byproduct
in
of the
2
hurry up
games.
too?
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
yeah, it is. Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't
We
it? Our
talked
3 and out.
about complimentary football for the last 4 seasons. And even if you're gonna have a 3 and out, you can still burn 2 minutes off the clock, 2.5 minutes instead of, 17 seconds per play or whatever.
If I'm going to complain about defense or voice some concerns, it's going to be Woody Washington worries me. Gentry's injury worries me. The lack of defensive end production worries me. I do expect that, and I didn't really look to see, so I should have looked to see before I just speculate on this, but I'm going to speculate that Houston was running a more dynamic defense than we were. And so we have not seen the full dimension of our dynamism, our ability to run blitzes and other things that we're going to institute that will give us a bit of an advantage for sure,
Which we'll have to do this week.
which we will have to do this week. Yeah, and so we're going to get a lot of information about OU's offense, but we're going to get a lot of information, I think, about the defense because or the coaches, because if they don't do that, you're taking a lot for granted.
I think the defense is good. I don't think it's elite. We have been vanilla on defense, but there are plays to be made against us. And very quietly, this number surprised me quite a bit. And they were simple throws and easy throws, but Houston's quarterback was 24 for 28.
Yeah.
That's a lot of completion.
A lot of
That's a high
percentage and a high number,
Yes. Now they didn't put up hardly any yards. Like I said, they were easy throws.
but they were smart getting the ball
I
out quick.
wish we would maybe try and do.
Well, if I'm a Houston fan, I'm criticizing back. They ran the ball a lot where I don't think they should have ran the ball.
Well, I
On
think
some
we're
very questionable running decisions.
And we stuffed it.
unfortunately for us, or fortunately, I think we're actually a really good running.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
for sure.
Like really good.
That's fortunate.
But we're about to play 5 elite quarterbacks. And I don't know if I haven't seen anything from our coverage that says we can just go man up on people and be fine.
Well, I don't know how you see something from our coverage when we're running, again, back to the running back complaint, we're running 7 different guys out there on any given down. And I think, Steve, to your point, I think a lot of it was we're tired, we're getting on the field much more than what the offense is playing, and we're making sure guys are fresh, rotating in some. I mean, Jaren Canick, for God's sakes, was in there at linebacker, like we talked about. Like, you're not going to see that a lot this season. God forbid injuries and anything else, but I don't think Woody Washington is a, number 1, number 2 option at cornerback. And even with Gentry, I don't think he's in that 2 deep on either side.
Well,
So-
and not to the degree that you'd have to depend on him.
Right.
So
And we
if
did
you're
the other
looking
day.
for coverage sacks, that's not going to happen out of that crew, especially without a Gentry. You're going to have pressure that you generate and manufacture. That's going to come from blitzes. That's going to come from overloads that are well schemed. And you're going to have to get defensive ends that get in the game and get around. And you're probably going to have to get more to be elite on defense. You're going to probably have to get more creative than you'd like to have to get, I would estimate.
Well, I can tell you right now, Tulane had 472 yards of offense against Southeast Louisiana in game 1. That's a rundown. But then they had 491 against Kansas State. And we all think Kleiman is a great coach.
And they were getting behind K-State's defense.
They had 342 passing yards.
Like our
That's
safety,
weak.
our safeties are going to get some work on Saturday
Against
for sure.
against a team that, I don't know how good K-State is this year, but we all think Kleiman's a good coach. And
I think they're a top
and
3
he's a
team in the Big
defensive
12.
guy. And
Mhm.
if they're putting up numbers like that against K-State, that's definitely scary for our secondary.
Yeah,
coming
we
into this
can't
game.
hold back on defense at all.
Nope.
You can't, I mean, I don't know how many signs you need between that and the fact that our offense is as inept as it's been. You cannot depend on anything. You've got to pull the stops out, so to speak. You're going to have to show things against Tulane that you probably didn't want to show. Look at it, be optimistic, say, all right, we get to work on some stuff. And we're going to show some stuff to Texas and Tennessee and everyone else that they're going to have to prepare for and work on.
And good teams shouldn't care about that.
They shouldn't. They really shouldn't.
Like, you should be good enough to say, I don't care if you know what I'm running because I'm going to run it anyways, and I'm going to beat you with it.
So I don't know enough about it to know with authority, but I'm guessing in the NFL, and they do have the luxury of being able to do this, but I bet their vanilla is where they're just holding a few things back, but most of the time, because it's an NFL situation,
Wide open.
you have to do everything you've got. You got to play the playbook, and then it's about refinement. And so it's like, yeah, there may be some things that are almost on the realm of trick plays, both offensively and defensively, that you don't show. But for the most part, it's like, all right, yeah, you're going to have tape on us doing this, but that's okay because we're going to get better at doing this by actually doing it.
I mean, we are on the ropes right now, I feel, as a team.
Yes.
And if I'm Brent,
I hope they feel that way too.
I hope they do too. And I think Brent does. I mean, he
Said after the game.
he
I
acted.
should watch.
Yeah,
He said it twice.
He acted like.
How do you guys feel about that comment?
I don't like it. Not in that forum.
I think he was going away from coach speak and telling the truth.
But I don't think it gives enough. I think, and he tried to follow it up with the defense played great. I would have rather have just heard we did what we needed to do to win the game. I agree. I mean, I posted a video saying I agree with it. Like, we did deserve to lose. I think we did everything in our power to give that game away, but it also takes a little bit of credit away from the outstanding performance by the defense in the second half, in my opinion.
So I'm
At
a
least it wasn't
little.
just coach speak.
It's a frustration.
It
People
is.
complain all the
It
time
is.
about hearing Stoops would come in and it would just be coach speak, and the players would be coached up to just give coach speak.
I think
So
it
to
was
see him on the sideline saying that, he was doing it to tell the truth, and he's letting his players know this ain't anywhere near good enough.
I tend to agree with that. I'm ambivalent about it. Like, I never liked the old Stoops line of there's a big difference between winning and losing, because that was always just a cop out to say, like, we won the game, be happy. But it's a fine line, and I think he straddled it well. He didn't cross over, but it's really close, a slippery slope to saying, I'm doubting my team. And you're not saying the right things about I think we can win. It's more like the frustration is coming out. And our frustration should be, I mean, we're not going to have coach speak. He's got to have some degree of coach.
Yeah,
speak.
and like maybe even a statement like, fortunate to come out with the victory. The way we played tonight was certainly not the standard, and it's not going to be good enough.
Like, we could have lost that game, but by the way we played. So I'm not going to critique the
Yeah.
language too much. At the end of the day, I kind of like what
It
he
is
said.
good to hear a little
like
bit
the
of a
honesty.
frustration.
It's raw emotion
Yeah,
coming
it's
coming
raw
off
emotion.
the sideline
Yeah.
of the game.
Yeah.
And that game ended weird because I kept waiting for the replay booth to come in and say, "Hey, this game's not
They
over."
called they called the teams back over to
Yeah.
the sidelines. They went back
Yeah.
over, so it was not. They were confused about if that game truly
I
was
sat there
over
for 5
yet.
minutes wondering if they
Yeah,
weren't.
so I'm
going
sure
to
there was a lot of frustration
spot
and
the ball and
confusion,
replay.
and give them a
Give it
down
an untimed
somehow.
down.
Yeah. So I could see. Yeah. I'm not going to critique it and get too worried about it, but it was an interesting comment. I sure as hell hope he's not making that comment anymore, because it's not deserved. But I fear
I
he'll
think
be
he
in some
felt-
games where he say we deserve to lose the game after we actually lose one.
I think he felt how we felt. I mean, it
Oh,
felt like a
absolutely.
loss.
It did.
That game felt like we lost.
Well, and this is where Brent needs to take on, again, we talked about it, the CEO role, and he needs to go sit in the offensive film rooms all week. Say, Zach, you have the defense. We're playing well. Coach him up for Tulane. I trust you to prepare. I'm going to go sit in with the offense and tell Seth what I think, because it's not getting done on that side of the ball in any facet. So go insert yourself into the process, make it a point, and then figure out the root cause and drive off of it.
Well, also, and who are our analysts? Who are our analyst coaches? Like, everybody should be in the room putting some thought process into it to say, all right, guys, here's what's wrong. Here's what can be right. Here's what we need to do. How do we get there? and having an honest conversation, because I don't know how it is, but it could be the case that Seth is still trying to do some things out here that you say, whoa, 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 no, draw it back in. You need to work on this until you get this right so that we win. And we'll see in week 7 where we are
Yeah.
to be implementing
Don't
whatever
do
it
too
is you want to do.
much.
Don't do too much. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you got to treat this game like Tennessee, in my opinion, with where we're at, like,
preparation wise and everything.
preparation wise, and what you're going to be doing with the playbook and everything else. Like, this is a no punches. I mean, I'm not saying you show everything, but
You show everything you think you can do.
don't be
You show-
worried about
you show it until it's-
not showing.
You
stuff.
show it until the game's
In
completely
hand.
out of hand,
Yeah.
in hand, whatever. So yeah, when you are winning 28-0, then you can dial
Dial
it
it
back.
back.
But not until that point. Don't
Right.
take it for granted that you can just get there. So let's start with some of the other stuff that we'd like to get to, including predictions. But let's start with the trivia of the week. So Connor, you had the trivia of the week. Set that up for us.
Yeah, so Brent Venables has been the head coach of OU for a total of 28 games. A lot of talk about the line this week. A lot of money going in favor of Tulane. I think Jay, you mentioned earlier that line is shifted by about 1 point already. And it's just Wednesday, so we'll see where it lands. But trivia question is, out of those 28 games, what is Brent Venables' record against the spread?
Steve, do you know the answer already?
I know the answer.
I'm gonna
That defeats the
say
purpose of him picking this week's.
Well, I had to,
Well, you had a fact check.
I had to fact check.
I'm gonna go with we have not covered 60%.
So you're
I'm
saying
gonna say 12 and 16.
12 and 16, so you're at 40%.
It's about 12 and 16-ish. Yeah.
12 and 16. All right. So source I pulled from Brent Venables exactly 50%, 14 and 14 against the spread. Steve,
I
has
had a
little bit
minor
different
difference. So I think it was a game last year where we covered by 1 point. So I think it moved. I actually have it at 15 and 13. So it's, it depends on which line you capture.
Yep.
But so it's right there in the either slightly above 50 or right at 50-50, which is what you would expect in general. Stoops, I tracked this for Stoops. He was about there. He might have been at 52. I should look that up and be able to tell you.
No,
He's
for
right on
most-
part of the locks of the week then.
Yeah.
Huh?
most
Yeah,
years-
you're right. Yeah.
About
For most
500.
years, though, I'll say the majority of the Stoops time, we're having to cover
Big
much larger
spreads.
spreads.
Big spreads.
Right.
Same with
I-
Lincoln.
And I think with BV, they've been smaller spreads that we're meeting or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, you're favored in probably quite a few of those games going into the 22 season. And you went 7 and 5 regular season, so you probably didn't cover a lot of those in year one.
He would, yeah.
Last year you
Well,
got 10 and 2.
I bet he's been the dog in.
We went 6 and 7.
We went 6 and 6 regular
Yeah.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was all games,
That's
including bowl games.
Yeah.
I bet he's been a dog less than or equal to 5 pounds.
Well, as I try to pull that up, let's transition to the prop bet of the week. So lay that out for us, Connor.
Yep. So again, another pain point. Kind of brought it up earlier. I think Lucas, you did. Third downs have been a massive, massive issue for OU, whether it be actually converting third downs or staying on schedule and having third and manageables. Seems like everything we had last week was third and long. So prop bet of the week, over under on third down conversions at 5.5. We had 1 against Temple. We had 4 against Houston.
To win the game, it has to be over.
So you're saying we're gonna win the game, we're going over?
It has to be over.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't know. You can go 3 games in a row, not getting 5 third down.
Yeah, you could. You don't have that many third downs.
If you pick up first down on second down a lot.
Yeah, but we're not.
We haven't been. Not when it's 2nd and 8 after a 2-yard run.
Yeah, we
Were
haven't
we
been.
4?
I'm just saying, I'm just
425,
telling you how
maybe,
it could
right
happen.
now?
I think it's like 5 for 26 or something like that.
5 for 26?
Yeah.
That is
Something
so
like that.
bad.
Yeah, so we were against Houston, we were 4 for 14. against Temple,
1 for
15.
1 for 12,
12. So 5 for 20.
5 for 26.
That is brutal.
For a total of,
For a top 15 program,
we
top
are
15 in the poll.
19% conversion rate on third down.
That has
So
to be
5.5.
that has to be one of the worst in the country.
I'm gonna go over by a narrow margin.
I have under. I think we're gonna be under.
But not for the reasons we.
But not for the
are
reasons you're
talking about.
saying. I think I'm like, well, I mean, I'm gonna be optimistic and think we're gonna win the game and all that, but
Stay out of third downs.
I think we stay out of third downs. I think that we're under that. We'll see.
I
I
like
don't
the
know.
optimism.
So
I'm gonna go over.
we got 3 overs and 1 under. For the last week we were 0-4. Week before that we were 1-3. So we're not very good on our prop bets.
So do we need to switch the overs?
So
Fade us big.
in the first season, we were unfavored in 2 games, the Texas game and the Florida State game. Venables was favored every other time. He covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. He covered the Florida State game. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. He was 5 out of 6 on being favored in the first season. 5 and 6.
Covered 5 out of 6.
No, 5 and 6
5
of the favored. He was unfavored and he was 1-1 in those. Overall, like we said, he's been favored 15 times in total, which makes sense. I'll try to pull up the.
Wow,
Stoops
so he's been a
numbers in just
dog in
second.
13 games.
Yeah, that's what that would be. So he
Wow.
was a dog. No. No,
Are you not
hold
counting
on.
bowl games?
Hold on.
He said we were only a dog in 2 games first season.
He was,
Check
yeah,
this
the
in Florida
first, yeah, the first 2 games. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was at home. He's been a favorite in 26 games, unfavored in 3 games.
Both Texas and Florida State.
Yeah. So as I try to pull up the Stoops numbers, so I'll pull that up in a second. It's got internet problems. Let's transition into what should be just the absolute easiest thing in the world, and that is the locks of the week.
The realest deal. Locks of the week.
So locks of the week. We were not very good last week. I was 0-3. Connor was 1-2. Lucas was 1-2. Jay was 2-1. Good job.
Oh boy.
Our listener, Nolan, was 2-1. So for the season, I'm 2-4. Connor's 2-4, 33%. Lucas 50-50 at 3-3. Jay, you're doing great. 4-2, 67%. Sorry, we can't live up to your standard. The
Hey,
listener.
I'll let you down in November.
The listener was 4-2 for 67%. As a group, not including the listener, we're 11 and 13, 46%. So we're within striking.
We're on
distance.
our average.
Let's not get too upset at ourselves here, right? But who wants to lead us off on locks of the week? Should we start with the listener? Let's start with the listener.
Yeah, let's start with the listener. So listener this week is longtime listener, Alex. So let me just start from the top. First pick is Coastal Carolina, -17.5 against Temple.
What's the service pick?
Yeah, they're playing Temple. He's already seen them play. I debated that one as well.
It said Forrest Brock took a major blow to the head against Navy on Saturday. Head coach says that he's day-to-day, but doesn't think that he's going to be playing quarterback for Temple this week. Second pick is South Carolina +6.5 at home against LSU. LSU's first time traveling to South Carolina since 2008, which is insane. Got a big win last weekend, and they were 9-point dogs last weekend as well, against Kentucky. So he's going with the Gamecocks in that one. And then last pick for Alex is TCU -1.5 against UCF. Night game / blackout game for TCU. Thinks it's going to be a classic Big 12 shootout, and he's going to give the edge to the home team there. So Alex, good picks. However, we're hoping for the worst.
So I'll start with me. I've got the United States Air Force getting 15.5 against Baylor. I'm not gonna give reasons like Alex did because why would you? You're on 3. North Texas getting 9.5 against Texas Tech, so I'm betting against the Big 12, obviously. And then Toledo getting 13 against Mississippi State.
Not a big Levy fan, huh?
No, not a Levy fan in this game at least.
All right, I'll go next. I've been going with favorites the last 2 weeks, and it looks like I'm actually going to continue on that trend. First pick, I've got Kansas State giving 6.5 to Arizona. I think Kansas State bounces back after a close one against Tulane. I've got Georgia giving 23.5 against Kentucky.
23.5, right? Yeah.
23.5. Kentucky did not look good last week. Georgia is Georgia. I think enough said there. And final lock of the week, I'm going to keep riding the 2 ponies. I've got OU covering, giving 13.5 on Saturday against Tulane. Going against the public.
That's a bold
thought.
pick.
I will not be following the groupthink that is out there. Vegas likes OU, and I like Vegas. So,
Well, to interrupt a little bit of our rhythm here, I'll say that I think there's a lot of ways that we cover, right? If the cliche, the Lincoln Riley cliche, it's fixable and we're close, it's fixable and we're close. At least fixable to a degree of if we get a few things right, our offense starts clicking, defense plays well, we can overperform real easily in this game. We're talented enough, we can overperform very easily. We can totally blow it up. But it's not impossible to think we can actually cover 2 touchdowns.
It could be as simple as one Nick Anderson getting on the field.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot.
and Andrell Anthony.
It does not
Wherever
take a
Well,
lot.
if you got both.
I think I'm riding an optimistic thought process here because if we don't beat Tulane by 2 touchdowns, I'm already worried, but I am like just extremely terrified of what is to come with Tennessee. So I need a big win on Saturday to feel any confidence at all with Tennessee coming to town next week.
I've got Bama at minus 15.5 against Wisconsin.
Like it?
I've got the University of Texas minus 34.5 against UTSA.
Like it?
I think that's a game that they step on them early and Arch Manning gets in and they want to see what he can do. And he just keeps rolling. And I mean, that game could be 56-0. I mean, that spread seems low to me.
Okay.
And then I've got Pitt +2 against West Virginia. And what do they call it? The backyard brawl.
Backyard brawl.
That's at Pitt. Or no, see. Can't remember. Let me look at that.
To be there.
Oh yeah, I don't have it on this list.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
It seems like Pitt was at home. I'm pretty sure Pitt's at home and they're getting 2. So
It's yeah,
like that.
the home dog.
the
I
home
like
dog,
it.
even though it's not a big spread,
Pitt's at home.
Well, even
it's
better.
actually just a win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pitt's at home.
They just got to win the game.
Yeah, that's the game.
And that game is actually, I mean, that game in the past has been just one where it's a toss up.
It's been like a bedlam.
very
It's been
similar
like
to
a Red
Bedlam.
River, yeah.
Like just you kind of don't know what's going to happen in that most of the time. So
Yep.
good pick.
I'm gonna go with 3 road dogs.
Road dog, 3 dogs.
3 dogs.
The road dogs.
I'm gonna take Memphis +6.5 against Florida State. I think Memphis, it's between Memphis and Boise on who's gonna get that playoff bid. And this is a huge game for Memphis. They've looked at it on the schedule, I'm sure, all off season, and Florida State's trash.
Yeah, Boise doesn't get armbarred by the Oregon refs on Saturday. It's a
So
big difference.
that's why I'm going with Memphis.
I like it.
I'm gonna take UNLV +7.5 against Kansas.
Where's that game?
Kansas.
Now, Kansas, these are all road
These are
dogs.
all road
Road
dogs.
dogs. I apologize. Thank you.
Kansas
You're
hasn't
busy
looked
partying.
that great
Was.
so far.
No, they haven't.
They're not looked as good as maybe
you
they
think-
should
You
be.
think they're gonna build that stadium?
Not
And your
sure.
quarterback's got some rust because he missed the whole season.
That's true. Well, UNLV's, you know,
No, they're going to repurpose it and pay basketball.
according
players.
to the Houston we saw, UNLV might be a decent football team. So,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna go with my 3rd road dog of a team that is overachieving. Well, I don't know if they're overachieving, maybe they're underrated versus a home team that has yet to really do anything. And that is Boston College +16 at Missouri.
They
thought
beat-
that line
they
was
beat Florida
interesting,
State
too.
at Florida
The
State.
only thing that I question about Boston College and because of the Florida State game is Florida State's offense is not good. And I don't know what Boston College's defense is. I could see Luther Burden going in there and destroying them, but I think it's a worthy pick.
I like those. Those are
Missouri kind of got
That sounds like
lightning in a
2-1 to
bottle
me.
last year with an FCS running back coming over and then leading the SEC in rushing, which is just crazy.
And they also led the nation in one possession win.
Yeah, they won
Yeah.
like 7 games.
And they
by
haven't
possession.
yet replaced that running back production.
right.
And I think BC's that quarterback was impressive to me.
He's a real deal.
Scrappy little, keep things alive,
I don't know.
overestimated player.
I don't know. Maybe you do who Missouri plays next, but this has got all the makings of a game Missouri could be overlooking,
She-rap game
and
for sure.
and Boston College won't be.
That's a good point.
So, I pulled up the Stoops numbers. So some interesting things here. He was favored 207 out of 239 times.
Wow.
Dang.
He was unfavored 30, and it was a pick'em twice. His record, I was just slightly shy of what his actual record was. He covered, I just saw it. Let me see if I can pull it up. 54% of the time. 129 games he covered out of 239, pushing a couple. So that's pretty good. You can cover 54% of the time. That's, over a big, good sample set. That is one more indication that he's a pretty damn good coach.
And
I'm
to
gonna
that
go
point-
ahead and say Stoops is a good
I
coach.
think he was okay. No, some of those lines in the mid 2000s, I'm sure were monstrous.
Hefty, yeah.
Like,
Especially the late season.
yeah,
When
Which
we
we probably covered a lot of
and,
those.
and that would be the two. I have two games that were no favorite actually, and that would be ones where we played a lower division team and they never even put a line out, which would be early in that tenure because they eventually started putting those out, and I would capture
North
those.
Texas.
Well, North Texas would have been a FBS school, I think, the whole time. It'd
But-
be,
so
it'd be
they
like a
would've for
Missouri
sure put
State or
that on.
Indiana
Yeah.
State. I don't think there was a line in the Indiana State game, its very first game. So I don't know. I would say that the locks of the week were particularly hard this week. Maybe I'm just coming to reality about that I'm not very good at this, and so they should look hard to me. I don't know, but they seem pretty difficult to me. Before we get to score predictions, any other color you want to provide on what you guys think will probably transpire in this game in relation to, and you've already called it that we're going to cover, Connor, but what do you guys think about just the cover, don't cover? Do you think that it's a fair line? Do you think that we are getting too much credit? What do you think's going on? Not enough credit?
Immediately after the game, I wouldn't have thought the spread would be this big.
No, I think you called 6.5 or something on the walk back.
Yeah. Just because how they performed against Kansas State. and
I said
how would-
12,
If
and I
Tulane,
think that was
if
a lucky
Tulane
guess.
wins that game last Saturday, it probably is around, I would say 12 and a half.
That's
give
probably
or
true.
take,
Yeah,
something around
Or
there.
lower.
10 and a half.
yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about one of the preseason picks to win the Big 12 call.
Yeah, that they played tight with.
Well,
They
you
had
can see
500 yards of offense against
if
that
they
team.
had won, I think that line is way down.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, it was a 1 touchdown game. It was 34-27, I think.
Yeah.
And they had the ball.
Kansas State had to score late a couple times to win it.
So let's run through some scores. Let's go in reverse order of the lock. So Jay, you go first.
Much to Connor's dismay, I have
No.
OU 27-20.
So it covers your 6.5.
Can I lock that?
Convenient.
I think it's gonna be tight. I think we'll fix enough things and get enough going. I think our defense will get pressed more than we've been pressed
Enough
so
to win.
far.
How do you feel with a score like that against Tulane?
I guess it'd be
At
context,
this point,
right?
fine.
Take what you
If you're
get.
talking about what does it mean for the season on 9, 10, 11 wins? No, not great. But with readjusted expectations,
You'll take 3-0.
especially with injuries.
Yeah.
My whole outlook can change on Hickman coming back at center and Sexton being able to move back to tackle because we find somebody else that can play guard because he's not having to play guard because he's having to make the calls because we don't have a center that knows the calls and you got Anderson back and Anthony back and somebody else
a
steps up.
semblance of an offense.
Yes, my whole outlook can change to like a preseason outlook. But right now it's survive and advance.
I
Fair.
respect that.
All right, Lucas, what do you got?
I've got Oklahoma 30-17.
Like it.
13 points right there.
Yep, so I've got us not covering,
Just barely.
just barely.
As of now.
Okay, score though.
I mean, I
I
would
like
take
that
it,
score.
but I think that's 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals.
Not enough scoring.
I'm hoping we get back to the turnovers. I don't expect 6 like we had game 1. We had 2 last game, I think. Which one of them wasn't legitimate on the punt.
Yeah.
But if we can force 2 or 3 turnovers, obviously it helps a lot. If you're getting the ball, especially if it's on their half the field.
That scares me though. I don't want to depend on turnovers.
I don't want to depend on it, but that's how I think the score settles up.
Connor, what do you got?
Turnovers.
I've got OU 41, Tulane 20.
Okay. I have Oklahoma 42, Tulane 24, the reverse of our score. So I think we cover. I think basically, I mean, if I'm going to paint a difference, I've got a little bit higher. I've got a higher score in both cases. I think that if we can convert what you think are going to be field goals, Lucas, into touchdowns, they hit my number, right?
Yeah.
And the 24 could be disappointing. It could be a backdoor 24. We're still covering, but they get something late and it's not meaningful. It could be that we're in a dogfight and we put them away. We turn something on and we go from being up by, 3 at halftime to putting them away. I don't know. And the defense really steps up in the second half. I could see a lot of ways we get to my score that for the most part I can feel good about, but it's going to take something like my score to feel really good about it going into the rest of the season in Tennessee. If we're at Jay's score, it's going to be really hard to feel very good about it. And
I will feel very, very nervous.
back to where we were talking at the in the post game a little bit about very, centric on us. If we lose to Tulane, I'm selling my Auburn tickets right away and canceling my hotel. I'm not making that game.
Nope.
If we beat Tulane, it's still probably dependent on the Tennessee game. Probably if we look really good against Tulane and we lose narrowly to Tennessee, then it might be a game week decision. But it's almost like we have to go 2-0 for me to make the Auburn trip at this point. That's an expensive trip for me because that's 3 days of my time. That's my entire weekend, including a day off that I'm going to take on Friday. And obviously it's a long drive and everything that goes with that. We'll have a hell of a party watching it here. I'm hoping we're not doing that. I'm hoping we're in Auburn celebrating a team that has put it together, but that remains to be seen very much so.
They're not going to poison any trees or anything if you go already.
I plan on not poisoning trees just for the sake of I'm not a vandal.
Yeah.
And I think that wouldn't go well. I don't see how that plays out well. What goes through a fan's brain to think I'm going to poison trees that are like unbelievable?
Now they toilet paper them after a victory, right?
Yeah,
They don't do it like a pregame. It's not
No,
like
it's a win.
it's a
like a
win.
12th man thing where they have a big
No,
rally where they, bake, army and all that kind of stuff. Like
no, I don't think Lassie comes out and
Okay.
they do
So
bugle.
poisoning a tree is right up there with killing a longhorn and dumping it on the lawn
Yeah,
of
of a rival fraternity. Yeah. Yeah.
Except that tree is a lot older than that long one.
That's true. And that
Right.
longhorn meat can be used for something. I guess the tree could be too, but once it's poison, I don't know if you can turn it into good furniture. So there's a lot of ways I want us to get SEC ready. I don't want us to get SEC ready ever in the vandalism or any of that type of stuff. Let's
Lock
not
me
do
up.
that. Yeah.
Lock me up.
All right. Well, anything else to cover, guys? We're gonna of course be back for the post game after the Tulane game. Hopefully we are in better spirits than this last game.
I feel like you guys have underestimated Tulane.
I have them scoring 24 points.
I'm scoring 20. We
I
said,
think, I
Scored
think
we
this
said-
27 against K-State,
is a
so
top 25 team.
we said before the season that if we give up more than 28 points in the first 3 games, we'll be massively disappointed.
Good callback.
And we would, so even with my score, it's more than 28.
Yeah, but that's,
Oh,
Again,
no, it's
we're
not.
we're
It's
15 right
20
now.
27. We're, no, we're not. We're at 17 right now.
No, no, first game was 3. It was 51-3, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they scored 12.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
12.
Yeah,
They scored 12. I was
15.
thinking they scored
12.
Yeah,
sorry.
15 points. So
Yep.
we can only give up 13 more. Hey, if we hold them to 13 points, I'll feel real good about that.
Yeah.
I would.
Unless
feel-
our offense only scores 20. Then I won't feel that good about it.
I'd still feel good, but
Unless we're,
we'd
unless
be in
we're,
the same boat we're in right now.
unless we're, Iowa of the South.
Ugh.
Oh,
Don't say that.
yeah.
Why would you end the pod like that?
Just saying.
I'm trying to be-
We're gonna
they
fix
went
that.
10,
We're in the
they
middle of
went
the
10,
week.
11 games.
We're in the middle of the week. I'm trying to rise up. I'm not trying to be brought down. I've been brought down I go to sleep
5
thinking about-
days.
Well, we
I've been
got
going to sleep thinking
We're-
about how much
We're
I'm depressed
Crimson,
about
we're
OU.
Crimson Iowa.
Say that. Say that, man. Well, we got a 230 kick. It's going to be a billion and a
Okay,
half
how about-
degrees.
How about we're Crimson Wolverine
There you go.
from last year?
Maybe we learn a lot about this team that they can't play in good weather. It's going to take really, really rough, hot conditions.
Yeah,
for
they
them
just
to
think
rise
get
to the
that hot
occasion.
game in.
Yeah.
That's it for the season.
Here
opener.
we
They
go.
need
We're
that to
getting it
kick 'em
now.
off.
It's gonna be
here's
nice
a
and
little something to
boiling.
mention that's just to throw us out there for people. This is the first time in the AP poll that one conference had 6 of the top 7,
How about that? And
And
which
we play-
conference is that?
and we play 5.
Yeah, we don't just play in that conference. We play 5 of the 6.
Yeah, we play. Yeah,
That's
and
rough.
what made me think about that to mention it just now was if Tulane had won last week, which you could say they should have won last week. You're talking about adding another top 25 opponent to our schedule, which would have just been on paper, looking at it at the,
I mean, by the end of the season,
It's-
Tulane-
Nine out of 12,
unbelievable.
9 out of 12 teams would have been top.
it's unbelievable.
by the end of the season, they may be a top 25 team. Even if they lose to us, they will have had a loss to K-State and a loss to us,
And they run the
but they
table.
may run their conference.
And we need to get some credit for that, to be honest.
No,
I
they
mean,
We
will.
will. I think.
I
think
hope
you
so.
will.
But-
I hope so.
I mean, is it going to matter when you're 8-4?
Houston
No,
may
it's
win
not
the
gonna
Big
matter.
12.
It might.
Houston might go dominate the Big 12 this year.
All right, Houston's not doing it.
We're the 11th team in at 8-4, and we win it all. I like what you're saying, Lucas. I like
Love
where
it.
you're coming from.
Homer.
All right.
Thanks
Well,
to Dr. Keen again.
thanks for
thanks
Dr.
a lot,
Keen.
appreciate it.
Hope you never needed services, but if you do, I got a friend of a friend testimonial this week about what a great guy he is and the fact that he really looks after his patients. It was really insightful to see what kind of a caring guy he is. Very good doctor, very good guy. Thanks for his patronage. And until next time, Boomer.
See you.